Hello everyone, it's senior day for Concord football this coming Saturday when the Mountain Lions entertain the Fairmont State Fighting Falcons. Last home game of the year, of course. Wes McKinney and head coach Cody Edwards here to preview the matchup with FSU, who comes in with a record of 5-4 on the year. Coach, before we get into X's and O's, let's talk about your 8 seniors that will come across the Callahan Stadium turf for the final time on Saturday afternoon, be recognized pregame, and then, of course, compete in said game. Let's talk about those guys, what they have meant to your program. Most of them just 1 or 2 year guys, but how they impacted this program.
Yeah, I think, they've been very much a North Star for our program this year. They've really helped to lead our football program. Obviously the transition, my first year getting here, it takes a lot of leadership to get through a transition like that. And we're fortunate. Those 8 guys, along with other guys on our football team, have been able to help lead us and guide us in the right direction this year. Each of them have played a big role for us in whatever phase, offense, defense, or special teams. And so not only have they been impactful for us on the field, they've also been impactful for us off the field. And they're going to leave some really big shoes to fill. They're going to leave some really big holes in our football team, and we're definitely going to miss those guys, and we're excited to celebrate them, excited to celebrate their accomplishments and all the great things they've done for this football program on the field and off the field this season.
Yeah, you talk about some of those holes, the defensive line, Michael Herbert, Ethan Reynolds, Jalen Dollar, those 3 guys specifically, and then Corey Radcliffe in the back. All these, 3 of those 4 guys, 1 year guys. How have they kind of helped you rebuild this defense?
Yeah, they came in, they bought into what we were trying to do. They bought into the defense, they bought into the scheme. Corey, coming from the defensive scheme previously, had been in the scheme before, but he's been a great help to kind of get in and help lead that back end, and help those guys to understand, increase their football IQ. And obviously you get to the front with, Dollar's a returning player, but bringing in Ethan and Michael, and what those 3 guys have meant to us, the amount of reps they've played, the production that they've provided this season, have been able to help us play well at all 3 levels, because if you're good in the defensive front, it opens up a lot of opportunities at the second level and the third level, and we've seen a lot of that this year. So those 3 guys have been irreplaceable in our defense this year, and will be very hard to replace as we go forward. So we're very fortunate to have those guys.
I want to spend some time on the offensive seniors as well. Rashad Lucky Dowdy has split carries in the backfield, but he is your leading rusher in terms of running backs. And then Antonio Smith has been a cornerstone there on the offensive line. He has started at 3 different positions this year. How have those guys helped transform this offense and get it to where it is?
Absolutely. We've been fortunate to have some success at times on offense this year, and those guys have been paramount to that success. Early in the year, the running game really kind of struggled to get going, but later on in the year, man, Rashad really took off and kind of took hold of that rushing game, and with the other guys that are in that room, and we've been more explosive in that area the last 3 or 4 weeks. Antonio has been a day 1 guy for us since he got here. He's a hard worker, he's a grinder. He really gets after it on the offensive front, and he has some positional versatility. And so, those 2 guys, with the production that Rashad brings in the backfield and what he's been able to do for us this season, and then Antonio's got so much positional flexibility up front to be able to do so many things on our offensive front. Those guys are going to leave some pretty big shoes to fill for us offensively.
And then let's touch on a couple of late additions to this roster. Rodney Mike, who has come in and had to fill some big shoes with some injuries to the wide receiver room, and then Kenyon Boyer, steady Eddie in the kicking game. How about those 2 guys?
Man, both of those guys kind of had, and what you said, kind of late comers to our football program. They both have really interesting backstories, and for them, in both of their cases, for them to be here at Concord is pretty remarkable with what they kind of had to overcome to get to this point in their career. And we're fortunate to have both of them. They've been able to come in and make some impactful plays. Obviously, Rodney was our leading receiver this past week. Kenyon is almost perfect on the year in extra points. Has 4 field goals for us, have been huge in the games in which he had those. So, we're fortunate those guys are here. They had to go through a lot of hoops. They're both older guys. They've been in college football a long time, but they've brought a lot of veteran leadership and they've steadied those rooms. You talk about what Kenyon's been able to do with his experience and how long he's been playing in that specialist room. It's a group of younger guys. You talk about Rodney coming into a wide receiver room that's already really talented, but filled with a lot of young guys. And Rodney is kind of a steady Eddie type of presence in that room. And so both of those guys bringing the veteran leadership that they brought to our program in those areas has been really incredible.
All right, the opponent, Fairmont State, one of the most vaunted offenses, not only in the MEC but in Division II. They are a top 5 rushing attack. They're top 25 in points per game, total offense, you name it, right down the ladder there. It starts with the running back, Leonard Farrow, and the Fairmont State offensive line. How do you guys try to go at least limiting that rushing attack?
Yeah, I think for us, it's keeping a good foundation of what we do, our fundamentals and our basics of what we do defensively. You know, when you play an offense like Fairmont, they can do so many things formationally. They can do so many things with motions. They're so talented in the offensive line. They're talented in the backfield that they can create a lot of problems for you on defense. So if you try to do too much, you try to get too pretty or too cute, you can get yourself outflanked, you get yourself out of gaps pretty quickly with what they do. So for us, it's been a very laser focus on our fundamentals and our preparation and doing what we do and allowing our players to play fast. We don't want to bog our players down with a bunch of thoughts and a bunch of things going through their mind on game day. We want those guys to play fast, because if you don't play fast and you're not fundamentally sound, Fairmont can make you pay, and they can exploit those weaknesses very, very quickly.
All right, the quarterback, Nino Marzulli, he's the reigning MEC Freshman of the Year, stepped in, I think, Game 3, Game 4 last year, and had a great freshman season. Somehow, some way, he's kind of flown under the radar this year, but he still has 21 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions, and he's throwing for just about 240 yards per game. How do you try to limit what he does in the air?
Yeah, I think he's an incredibly talented player, and he's helped out. The passing game that they have is helped out by the running game. They're able to run the ball, throw the ball, and I think for him, he is very accurate. He's got a strong arm. He's got really good receivers that go up and make plays for him. He puts those receivers in good situations and good areas. So they've got a really good, almost like a perfect storm offensively. They're very balanced in terms of the yards per game, all in the passing game and in the running game. So they run the ball a little more than they throw it, but in terms of production, they're very, very balanced, because that run game opens up the doors for them in the pass game. Because when you can run the ball the way that they do, those linebackers and those defensive backs, they start to creep into the box because they're getting lulled to sleep with the run, and all of a sudden it's an up top pass. And so he does a really good job of putting the ball in the hands of his playmakers, and he gets the ball where it's supposed to be when it's supposed to be there.
All right, Fairmont State scoring 35 points per game. The bad news is for the Fighting Falcons, they give up 35 points per game. How do you guys exploit the cracks in the foundation on that Fairmont State defense?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of sticking to our fundamentals and sticking to our base of what we do offensively. We've been talking all week about sustaining drives. And I think that's where we have to improve as an offense, is being able to sustain drives over the course of a football game. I feel like at times we're very streaky. We can be very explosive, and that's good in a lot of ways. But when you're playing a team like Fairmont, the best offense or the best defense is a good offense, and so we need our offense to be able to sustain drives and get through those third downs and sometimes even those fourth down conversions to keep a drive alive, keep our defense off the field, keep their offense off the field as well, and continue to put up points. Because I think at the end of the day, if we can run the ball well up front, which is what we have been doing the last couple of weeks, it's going to open up those opportunities for us in the pass game.
The third phase of the game, I think, mega important this week. Ethan Vargo-Thomas, the punter for the Fighting Falcons. He leads the conference in punting over 45 yards per game. And then Emmanuel Richardson, their kicker, only 6 for 7 this year in field goals, but throughout the course of his career, he's hit some big-time clutch kicks for them. How does that play a role in Saturday's outcome based on what you guys have done in the return game here recently?
They're a seasoned and a scrappy football team, and they've won 2 overtime games on the year. And any time that you are playing that type of competitive football week in and week out, your special teams have to be really good, and they are well coached on special teams. They play really hard. I've challenged our special teams units this week. It has to be a week where we have to make a difference. We can't allow their special teams units to outplay our special teams units in that phase of the game. I felt like last week we just kind of were there. We didn't really help or hurt our football team over the course of the game. This week in special teams, we have to help our football team win. I think there's some opportunities for us in the in the return game, both kickoff return and punt return, which we hope will give us some juice there. And then kickoff coverage and punt coverage, those come down to just effort. Those come down to doing your job and playing with effort and those type of things. So they do some really good things in those areas. They've got some good returners, so we've got to be ready to go this week, and we have to be a major factor in special teams.
Last chance to come out and catch the Mountain Lions at Callahan Stadium Saturday, 1 o'clock kickoff. Hope you'll join us a little early to honor the 8 Concord football seniors. For the head coach, Cody Edwards, I'm Wes McKinney. Thank you for watching.